talk about this. For a lot of us, this is like the universal problem, sleeping. And a huge issue for a lot of people is electrical gadgets. What are they doing to our sleep? Are they stressing us out? Are they helping us sleep? And a lot of us live with these things 24/7. So let's talk about that first. What are these gadgets? When I will confess, I sleep with my phone, my smartphone next to my bed. It's my alarm clock. I check my email. If somebody messages me, I check my messages. What's that doing to my sleep, Dr. Galvin?
Well, it's probably not helping it, right? I mean, there's you just talked about a lot of disruption already. So not just the machine disrupting your sleep because you're checking your messages and what have you, but also even the light from the machine when you put it up to your face is going to disrupt kind of your internal rhythm. So it's not good to have those things next to your bed.
And so what is your recommendation on that? Should we have a rule where we get the gadgets out of the bedroom if we do seem to be having an issue getting good sleep?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think if you don't have any trouble with your sleep and you can wake up and go right back to sleep and feel rested the next day, then no problem with your gadgets. But if you're having problems falling asleep or staying asleep, or not feeling rested when you wake up, you probably should think about removing those electronic gadgets from your bedroom.
And what, in essence, is the problem? Is it that the gadget's distracting you when you wake up and kind of waking you back up? Is it the blue light that the gadget's giving off? What is the issue, and what seems to be sort of like undermining sleep?
Yeah, well, I think it depends. So, again, like just the disruption from the noise it makes or when it turns on and being sensitive to that, so you're kind of listening for it, so you don't sleep as deeply. But there was a recent study that suggested like people that read like from an e-reader before they go to bed, that in this study they actually showed that when they did that for 5 days in a row and then checked them compared to just reading a regular book and normal light, that those people took them longer to fall asleep. They ended up having less REM sleep, so they were about 10 minutes less of the dream sleep that's important. Their melatonin levels, which is kind of a chemical that helps you fall asleep and stay asleep, that was delayed the onset of when it turned on by over an hour, and it was actually reduced. The amount that you had was reduced in your system by 55%. They were more alert when they went to bed, so they weren't as sleepy, but they were more sleepy when they woke up. So it had all kinds of bad ramifications for their sleep. So it's both the machine being there and disrupting your sleep, but it also appears to be that light that the machine is emitting.
And what kind of, you must get a lot of questions about sleep. One of the questions we were looking at is how much sleep do we really need? What's a good minimum to be getting, and what's a good number to shoot for realistically?
Yeah, well, I do get that question a lot. In reality, it's variable. So there are some people who can get away with less sleep. There are some people who need more sleep, but in general, we recommend most adults need 7 to 8 hours. Now, it's different for children, different for adolescents, but adults need about 7 or 8 hours. And little tips that you can figure out for yourself to determine if you're getting enough sleep. So, do you sleep in more on the weekends? Do you have to wake up to an alarm clock? So does that alarm clock have to wake you up? Or do you find yourself not sleepy during the day or tired during the having to go get that extra cappuccino or what have you? That suggests that you're not getting enough sleep. So there is some variability, but you should probably target a minimum of 7 hours of sleep.
And if I feel like, if I'm hitting 5 or 6, how do you get there? Is it a gradual process where you do this incrementally? You build up to a better number? Is it going to bed earlier? Is it staying in bed later? Is there a secret?
Well, what I tell most of my patients is the problem is most people have to get up at a certain time. They have to get up to go to school or go to work or whatever, take care of their children. So trying to lengthen that time in bed is very challenging. So you end up having to pick it up on the when you get to bed side. Okay. And so, people are always trying to do much more than they can, push what they can get out of the day and avoid sleeping.
Yeah.
But sleeping is really important. It'll make you perhaps more productive during the day if you're getting enough sleep. So you really want to try to, make sure you're getting in bed, figure out when you have to get up, and make sure you're getting in bed so you get at least that 7 hours. And that's probably what most people have to do. Now on the weekends, if you are chronically sleep deprived, it's not so bad to catch it up on the weekends. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's better to not be sleep deprived during the week if you can avoid it.
Exactly. And we're taking your questions also and your comments, and we've got Dr. Nancy Colloup here. She's the director of the Emory Sleep Center. So we'd love to hear what people have to think. If you wanna leave your question for us, and we'll fill us in if we get any.
Yeah, and actually on that note, Doctor, I guess if you could elaborate a little bit you talk about the stimulation of the brain at night with technology. Is it the brightness of the screen when you're laying in bed trying to go to bed that will keep the brain awake? Is it the processing information and seeing what other people are doing and thinking and then having thoughts of your own? What is it about the stimulation there that can keep your brain active and not be able to unwind and unplug?
Well, the actual chemical that I talked about earlier, melatonin, it is released in the evening hours, and it is most sensitive to light stimulation. So it is when light goes down, melatonin is released, and so it's actually part of it is the actual light itself, and actually even certain wavelengths of light are more stimulating. So a blue light is more stimulating. So that's why I said if they were reading a regular book with a backlit, like you have in your room, low light, that was much less disruptive to their sleep than sitting with that e-reader right in front of their face. So it probably has to do with how the light is transmitted. So probably a tablet is going to be worse than an e-reader. Your phone, how close it is to your face, how long you are exposed to it. I mean, all those things play a role in how it's going to disrupt your sleep.
Okay, and then the issue of checking, is that kind of, if you're checking your email, if you're checking your messages, if maybe you're reaching out to somebody, is that kind of waking your brain up too?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So, when patients come to us and have insomnia complaints, we always ask them about their phone and what's in their room and what's going on. And, we really recommend, if you have trouble falling asleep, first of all, those things need to be gone, which we talked about, but even setting aside some time right before you go to bed, for the half hour, 45 minutes, to do relaxing things, to kind of allow your brain time to kind of wind down and prepare your brain for sleep.
So what's a good ritual for what seems to work for people as far as relaxing?
Well, I mean, I think it's different for different people. I mean, it might be listening to music. It might be reading. Again, probably not so good with that laptop, but listening to music, whatever is. Sometimes we'll have people just kind of go through their day. It's a very boring process to go like through your day from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, and that's actually kind of, it distracts your mind from all the other things you have to worry about. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes we'll have people do that. Of course, then there's the old standard counting sheep. But again, these are all just things that distract your brain from all that stuff you have to do the next day.
So whatever works to kind of wind you down a little bit.
It's
And I think
do
we have something from
a
Facebook?
couple of comments here.
All right. Will you read those to me?
Yeah, sure.
Because I can't see very well.
Let's see. Alana Squires. She says, probably I can't put mine down. Shoot, I'm on it right now, shaking my head, referring to her smartphone, making her brain lazy. And Terrell Case, she says, I sleep great without unplugging from technology. Smartphones don't make our brains lazy.
And we were speaking about the lazy. That was another study that showed that people who tend to constantly search on their smartphones and use their search engines tend to be less sort of analytical thinkers, more intuitive thinkers, and that all this reliance that we have of needing these instant answers from Mr. Google or whatever, that it may be impacting sort of the function of our brain. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, I think it has made life a lot more, it has made things a lot more convenient to find when you're carrying that phone in your hand. But, I read a few of those articles that looked at that, and, there really wasn't a clear preponderance of opinion. There's a clear defined whether it's bad or whether it's good or makes you lazy. Clearly, though, there were studies that suggested that if that phone is in view, that you pay less attention to what's going on around you, because they did it with, they did several studies where, where interacting with people, and if the phone was there, they were much less attentive to what the interaction was than if the phone was out of sight. So it definitely causes changes in your attention, but I agree, I don't think it necessarily makes you dumber.
That's a good thing because we all do it. And I think Will has a question.
Yeah, we're taking your questions on Facebook, and we're taking your questions right here in the YouTube chat channel as well. And we have one from Jessica, ladies, and she writes, what is a good amount of sleep for the average 10-year-old as well as a 15-year-old? And should the children lay the tablet or phone down before going to bed? That's from Jessica on YouTube.
Yeah, those are great questions. I read something that said the average teenager uses media about 7.5 hours a day. And so you know that they're probably using it at night. So I think it is important for them to have some downtime without the media before they go to bed. As far as how much sleep they should get, chances are most of them are not getting enough sleep. Almost all adolescents need at least 9 hours. Rarely do they get it. You could go into the whole debate about delaying school start times. And then probably younger children are closer to 9.5, 10 hours, depending on how old they are. Obviously, the sleep need decreases a little bit with aging, but most adolescents need at least 9 hours of sleep.
Okay. And as we get into the younger kids, they need more.
Absolutely, yep. And, obviously babies will sleep, 18 hours a day, and then it gradually, tapers off over time until we get to, early adulthood when it gets more to that 7 and 8 hour.
And we're talking with Dr. Nancy Colloup. She's the director of the Emory Sleep Center, and she is doing a live chat with us and taking your questions about your sleep and your gadgets and how the two combine and how they may not be so great for each other. And one question that I have is about napping. I love a good nap. Is napping good for our overall sleep? Is it a way to catch up? And is there an art to napping? I mean, is there a certain time limit you should be shooting for, or is the 3-hour nap that I like on a Sunday a good thing?
Yeah, well, if you're taking a 3-hour nap on a Sunday, that probably suggests that during the week you're not getting enough sleep.
Yeah.
So napping, definitely can be good. I mean, a sleep doctor is going to tell you, for most people, more sleep is always good. That's not 100% of the time, but for most people. So, but there is definitely an art to napping. So, if you take short, brief naps, 10 to 20 to 30 minutes, those can be very refreshing. But once you start to get into the longer than that, 30 minutes, an hour, you're going to probably hit deep sleep because that's just kind of a natural progression of your sleep. And then you're going to find it much more difficult to wake up. So if you want to take a refreshing nap, you want to limit it to about 30 minutes. If you're down for the count, it's probably okay to be a 2-hour nap. Because that's, like I said, if you're able to do that, that suggests you're probably a little sleep deprived. But just be aware of, an hour nap probably is going to be a lot more difficult to wake up out of than a 30-minute nap because of that.
And Dr. Colloup, a lot of us sleep in on the weekends, especially the folks who are on the early shift like I am sometimes. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, the sleeping in until 11, maybe noon, lunchtime on a Saturday to catch up?
Well, again, I think it depends on your schedule. Ideally, I think I'm going to reiterate this, ideally you want to get enough sleep every night. Because that's what your body craves and that's what it wants, and that's going to make you perform optimally. So having said that, if you don't get enough sleep, make up sleep is good. And you don't have to make up sleep every hour that you lose. You have to make up every hour. It's much less than that. So I think if you're sleeping longer to make up, that's probably okay, but you should really work on trying to make sure you're getting enough sleep during the week.
And we're talking live again, having a nice live chat with Dr. Nancy Colloup. She's the director of the Emory Sleep Center. I had a question about folks who have a hard time falling asleep. Is there a point where you should just call it and get back up and maybe do something relaxing? Or should you just fight it out and lie there and count sheep? And what works better?
Yeah, well, it's a little challenging, right? Because that happens to all of us. I think the usual recommendation we could give is if you've been in bed for more than 10 or 20 minutes, and the problem is we don't really want you to count look at the clock. So it's always hard to judge. But when you're in bed long enough that you know like this isn't working, then it probably is important to get up, get out of the bedroom, go get a drink of water, go read a book, listen to some music, do something that's relaxing. Don't turn the bright lights on. Just keep it in a dim light environment until you feel drowsy, and then try to go back to bed. Because what you want to do is you want your bed to be where you go to sleep. You don't want your bed to be where you're laying there awake. So we actually would advise you to get out of the bed typically and go do something. Now, don't go get on your laptop and start reading your emails. Or do something that's gonna put you in front of bright light, but do something that's relaxing.
Okay, and any suggestions on really kind of developing good sleep hygiene? What do they mean when they say you need good sleep hygiene, and how do you get that?
Yeah, well, I think we've already talked about several things that we would recommend. One is, having a regular bedtime and a regular wake time. And again, if it's long enough, that should be adequate every day out of the week. If you're going to try to get that 7 or 8 hours, you shouldn't really be varying your bed or wake times too much, because you should be getting enough sleep. Turning things off before you get ready to go to bed, and trying to, wind things down. If you want to take a hot bath or a shower, you don't want to do that right before you go to bed, because you actually want your body temperature to be falling. So you take it about an hour or so before bed. Exercise is always good for sleep hygiene, but again, we don't want you doing that close to bedtime. You want to do it, earlier in the day. And then, you don't want to eat heavy meals before you go to bed. Some people like to have a little light snack. That's probably okay, but you don't want a hamburger or a cheeseburger before you go to bed, because that is going to be disruptive to your sleep. So those are, I guess, and some of the other things like just making sure you have a cool environment when you sleep, a dark environment. A lot of people, like 40% of the United States sleeps with animals in their bedroom. Those can be very disruptive to their sleep. So, most people won't get rid of them, but it is better to have them out of the bedroom if you can. So those are the kind of things that are important in sleep hygiene. I guess one important thing is avoid caffeine. Almost always recommend people don't drink caffeine after noon, because some people can have a very stimulating effect. Lots of patients will tell me, I drink a cup of coffee before I go to bed. It doesn't bother me. If it doesn't bother you, that's fine. But if you're having sleep problems, you want to avoid it.
Okay, and I think we have a question from one of our followers, Will.
And also one of the, one thing that we were talking about here in the newsroom, if you think you detect a sleep problem, if you're just waking up and you're not as well rested as you think you are, what are some of the first steps that someone can take that's watching right now to maybe have a study or examine their own sleep patterns? How do you begin to kind of analyze your own sleep and start to correct it to make it better?
Dr. Colloup?
Well, I think, if you are having problems with your sleep, one thing that we often recommend is people just keep a diary of their sleep, and just do it for a couple weeks. See when are you going to bed? When are you getting up? How often are you waking up? What things happen during the day that might affect your sleep, and you might find some patterns, and that's pretty simple. Pretty simple thing that you can do. One thing that's very common is snoring, and so sometimes it's you that's snoring, sometimes it's your bed partner that's snoring, but that can be very disruptive to people's sleep. So you want to think about that, and the possibility of having sleep apnea as a potential cause, particularly if you go to sleep and you think you sleep okay, but you wake up the next morning and you're not feeling rested, and your bed partner saying, "Oh my God, you kept me awake all night." So those are the kind of things you'd want to think about. Here's another disorder that we commonly see that people may not attribute as a sleep disorder, but something called restless leg syndrome, where their legs are annoying them at night, and that prevents them from being able to fall asleep. And then sometimes, even after they go to sleep, they're still wiggling their legs. So there are a number, and again, the bed partner may notice that kind of thing. So there are a number of kind of things you can look for.
Okay, and we're getting ready to wrap things up, but I want to say thank you so much for coming out and doing this live chat. We had some good questions. And so bottom line, if I want better sleep, what are a couple things I could start doing, Dr. Colloup, right now, today?
Well, I think getting enough sleep is very important, and really trying to make a routine before you go to bed. So, stop concentrating on all the other stuff that you did today or that you have to do tomorrow, and try to give yourself a little relaxation time before you go to bed. And I think that actually can go a long way for a lot of people to help them get a better night's sleep.
Well, I've learned a lot from talking to you. It's Dr. Nancy Colloup. She is the director of the Emory Sleep Center, and sleep is an issue for a lot of us. So I appreciate you taking the time to come and do this live chat with us.
Enjoyed it.
And I hope you guys have enjoyed it too.
And you can catch more with Beth Galvin and the Fox Medical team during Good Day Atlanta each weekday, and also weeknights at 5 and 6 on Fox 5. And catch your articles anytime on myfoxatlanta.com. Thank you so much for joining us today.